Can a man who conquered the world still bleed in silence? James Callahan, at 82, is cinema's eternal flamme titan whose eyes have haunted generations. Yet, behind his mythic glory lie scars of broken vows. A daughter's unseen struggles, a body ravaged by illness, and a grief that cuts deeper than any role. What shadows still haunt this legend in his final act? James Callahan was born on February 12, 1943, in Chicago's South Side, where the wind carried both dreams and despair. His mother, Eleanor Voss, was a poet whose verses bled with unfulfilled longing. Her nights spent scribbling to keep hunger at bay. His father, Thomas Callahan, a sculptor, carved beauty from stone, but could not mend the fractures in his heart. Their love, a fleeting masterpiece, shattered in 1946 when Thomas confessed his love for another, man, a truth too heavy for the era's judgment. At 3, James was left in a home split apart. His father, a loving but distant shadow, his mother, a warrior, stitching together a life as a seamstress. Her fingers, pricked by needles, bore the weight of 2 lives, her eyes heavy with exhaustion, yet fierce with devotion. To the world, she was a single mother. To James, she was a titan-defying fate. Raised in the gritty pulse of Chicago's uptown and Pilsen neighborhoods, James navigated a world where art clashed with danger. Pale and slight, he was mocked as Jimmy Thin, the taunts stinging like the cold off Lake Michigan. Without siblings, he wandered alone. Caught between his mother's weary love and his father's letters, postmarked from distant cities. His parents rejected religion, but in 1947, his grandparents, in quiet rebellion, baptized him in a Lutheran church on Ashland Avenue, planting seeds of faith in a boy adrift. Loneliness was his shadow, but the cinema became his sanctuary. In the dim glow of the Biograph Theater, he watched Bogart and Bacall, their faces giving voice to the emotions his family buried. At 12, he stepped onto a stage as a shepherd in a school Christmas pageant, his tattered costume hiding a heart ignited by performance. Those early scars diluted, mockery, a fractured home carved a fire that would one day blaze across the world at 18. James Callahan chose exile over safety. In 1961, he dropped out of high school. Not in rebellion, but in desperation, seeking a path where loneliness could become strength. Acting was my way out, he later said. A chance to be someone else when being me hurt too much. He enrolled at the Goodman Theater, diving into method acting under mentor Clara Stein, who taught him to channel pain into truth. He haunted Chicago's underbelly diners on Clark Street, jazz clubs in Bronzeville, street corners where hustlers whispered, studying their gestures, their silences, their unspoken grief. He shadowed dock workers at the Port of Chicago, memorizing their slumped shoulders. He lingered in pool halls, borrowing the fire in a gambler's eyes. The city was his crucible, forging a raw, unpolished talent. His first role came in 1964, a fleeting part as a street kid in Whispers of Dawn, a low-budget film that flickered out in empty theaters. For 8 years, he survived on scraps commercials for local car dealers, bit parts in community plays, auditions that ended in silence. He lived in a one-room apartment on Division Street, the walls peeling, the radiator hissing. His diet of canned soup and die-old bread, casting directors dismissed him, their rejections sharp as broken glass. "You're too raw," one said. "Too intense," said another. Rejection is just fuel, James told himself, his voice steady but scarred. Each no hardened his resolve. Each slammed door a step toward destiny. In 1972, a small role as a grieving soldier in The Long March Home changed everything. Filmed in Chicago's rain-soaked streets, the $2 million drama earned modest praise but showcased James's raw power. His Cena 3-minute monologue, by a frozen grave left audiences breathless. Critic Pauline Kael wrote, "Callahan doesn't act, he bleeds." The role caught the eye of Michael Varelli, a 29-year-old director with a vision as fierce as James's own. Their collaboration on City of Ashes 1974 was a seismic shift. James played Tommy Rourke, a hustler with a heart of broken glass. His performance a live wire of rage and vulnerability, shot in Chicago's back alleys for $5 million. The film grossed $30 million and earned James a Best Supporting Actor nomination. The boy once called Jimmy Thin had become a flame no one could extinguish. Fame struck James Callahan like a storm, brilliant and merciless. In 1976, at 33, he starred in The Reckoning, a $10 million epic about a warlord haunted by his own brutality. To prepare, he lived among Vietnam veterans in a South Side shelter, learning their cadence, their nightmares, their silences. He trained for months, sparring until his fists bled, his voice hoarse from shouting lines in empty warehouses. When the film premiered, it grossed $80 million and stunned critics. Roger Ebert called it a performance that cuts like a knife. James won his first Oscar for Best Supporting Actor, but he skipped the ceremony, already lost in his next role. As if triumph was just a pause before the next battle, the weight of fame grew heavier. In 1978, Night's End demanded he become Daniel Cain, a drifter slipping into madness. James lived on Chicago's streets for weeks, shedding 30 pounds until his face was gaunt, his eyes hollow. He slept in alleys, ate from soup kitchens, and stared into cracked mirrors, whispering, "You talking to me?" A line unscripted, born from nights of fractured sanity. The $8 million film grossed $50 million, and James's performance became iconic, earning a Best Actor nomination. But the toll was private. "You carry those characters home," he confessed. "Sometimes they don't leave." Friends noticed his silences growing longer, his eyes heavier, as if Cain's madness lingered. In 1982, Ironheart pushed him to the brink. To play a boxer rising and falling, James trained with professional fighters at a Cicero gym, taking punches until his ribs ached. For the character's collapse, he gained 50 pounds in 4 months, devouring pasta and bread until his joints screamed and his heart strained. Doctors warned of cardiovascular risks. His trainer begged him to stop. "It had to be real," James said. Anything less would have been a lie. The $15 million film grossed $70 million, and James won his second Oscar for Best Actor. But his body paid the price: chronic joint pain, shortness of breath, a year of recovery. The victory was hollow, a crown that pressed heavily on a man already breaking. The 1980s and 1990s were a parade of triumphs. The Untamed, Bloodstreet's The Last King. But each carried a wound. Echoes of Time 1985, a $25 million passion project, was gutted by studio cuts. Its 4-hour vision slashed 2.2, limping to $4 million at the box office. Critics whispered, was Callahan too intense? Too inaccessible? Success felt like failure when measured against his own standards. If the screen made James Callahan a legend, it was love that revealed his humanity. In 1975, at 32, he married Clara Hensley, a dancer whose grace seemed to balance his storm. They adopted her daughter Lila, then 5, and welcomed a son, Nathan. In 1977, their Chicago brownstone was a sanctuary, filled with Lila's laughter and Nathan's first steps. James, the fierce method actor, became a tender father, reading bedtime stories, his voice soft with a warmth the world rarely saw. "Family is everything," he said, vowing to break the cycle of his own fractured childhood. But his intensity consumed him. Long shoots for The Reckoning kept him away for months. Characters lingered in his silences. Clara once said, he was always half in another world, with people who weren't there. By 1986, the marriage crumbled, not in anger but in quiet resignation. The divorce left James scarred, determined to shield Lila and Nathan from his own pain. Yet, haunted by the cycle he could not break. In 1999, James married Ellen Whitaker, a philanthropist whose warmth promised stability. They met at a Chicago charity gala, her calm a counterpoint to his storm. Their son Daniel, born in 2000, was diagnosed with autism at 3, a thunderclap that tested their bond. James poured his ferocity into fatherhood, attending therapy sessions, funding research, advocating with a resolve that rivaled his greatest roles. "You don't fight for love," he said. "You live it every day." But the strain of fame-less shoots, paparazzi at their door-widened cracks in their marriage. By 2003, divorce papers were signed. Though a brief reconciliation in 2007 brought a daughter, Sophie, through surrogacy. The renewal was fragile, and by 2010, the marriage ended for good. The image was stark, a wedding ring on a table, the scratch of a pen louder than any vow. The deepest wounds came not from fame, but from family. Daniel's autism was a lifelong journey, one James walked with unwavering love. He sat through countless therapy sessions, his face etched with pride and weariness, funding autism charities with millions from his fortune. "It's not about fixing him," he said. "It's about loving him as he is." But the loss of Lila's son, Ethan, in 2022 to a fentanyl-laced overdose at 20 was a blow that nearly broke him. Ethan, a budding musician who played gigs in Chicago's clubs, carried James's fire, his guitar riffs echoing his grandfather's intensity. James had seen himself in the boy, confiding to friends, "He's got the spark I had at his age." Ethan's death was a silent collapse, a void no role could fill. At the funeral, James stood trembling, his grief a private storm. "He was my light," he whispered, his voice breaking. The loss mirrored America's opioid crisis, with over 70,000 overdose deaths in 2022 alone, leaving James to grapple with a question that had no answer: why? In 2023, Nora came out as transgender, her announcement a quiet act of courage. James, often reserved, responded with an embrace that spoke louder than words. "I loved her then, and I love her now," he said, his voice steady but soft. The world saw a titan. James saw only his daughter, her truth, a testament to a father's heart transcending all else. He stood by Lila, grieving Ethan, by Daniel, navigating autism, by Elise, a doctor saving lives, by Sophie, a budding artist, and by Ava, his late-born hope. His love was a thread, weaving together a family scarred but unbroken, a legacy stronger than any film. James Callahan's body became a battlefield, scarred by the roles that made him immortal. In Iron Heart, he gained 50 pounds, his joints screaming, his heart straining under the weight. Doctors warned of lasting damage, hypertension, joint inflammation, but James pressed on. "It had to be real," he said. In Night's End, he lived as a drifter, wasting from hunger, his mind blurring with the character's madness. For Blood Streets, he broke 2 ribs filming a fight scene, refusing stunt doubles. "If it doesn't hurt, it's not honest," he told the crew, his face pale but resolute. In The Last King, he learned sword fighting at 53, tearing a shoulder muscle but finishing the shoot through gritted teeth. In 2004. At 61, lung cancer struck, a diagnosis that shattered his invincibility. He faced surgery in a Chicago hospital, the sterile light exposing a man who had played kings and killers, now reduced to a patient. "You don't think about dying," he said later. "You think about your kids, what you leave them." He survived, but the battle left scars, chronic fatigue, a weakened lung. In 2021, on the set of Shadows of Dust, a knee injury sent him to the floor, his ligament torn. Surgery followed, and for 6 months, he walked with crutches, his once commanding stride reduced to cautious steps. Crew members whispered, "Was the giant falling?" But James, his eyes fierce, refused to yield. "I'm still here," he said, his voice a challenge to fate. In 2024, a minor stroke slowed his speech, but he worked with therapists, relearning words with the same discipline that built his career. His body bore the weight of sacrifice, but his spirit remained unbroken. At 82, James Callahan's wealth, estimated at $450 million, is not just in his 2 Oscars, 3 Golden Globes, or the Presidential Medal of Freedom 2017. It's in the empire he built. With chef Alina Rossi and investor Mark Tate, he co-founded Vespera Hospitality in 1988, turning a Chicago eatery into a global chain of 42 restaurants and 15 hotels, from New York to Tokyo, generating $200 million annually. The Riverfront Film Festival, launched in 2002, revived Chicago's cultural heart after economic decline, drawing 50,000 attendees yearly. His Lakeview Hotel, a $30 million venture, hosts artists and dignitaries, its oak-paneled halls a nod to his love for craft. Osteria Bella, a cozy trattoria, is a Chicago staple, its tables booked months in advance. In the Caribbean, he backed Coral Sands Resort, a $50 million project blending luxury and local art. But empires face storms. In 2024, a lawsuit against his production company, Callahan Films, alleged mismanagement, costing $1.5 million in damages. The headlines stung, but James shrugged them off. "It's just noise," he said, his focus on his legacy. His homes tell a quieter story. A 90-acre Wisconsin farm, bought in 1995 for $2 million, is his sanctuary. Its orchards a refuge where he walks with Ava, his Chicago penthouse, purchased for $22 million in 2008. survived a 2013 fire that gutted 3 floors. James rebuilt it, brick by brick, a testament to his refusal to let ruin win. A Miami beach house, acquired in 2010 for $15 million. Hosts family gatherings, its decks echoing with laughter. James Callahan's greatest legacy is not his films or fortune. It's his children. Leela, 54, a playwright whose works grace Broadway. Nathan, 48, a teacher shaping young minds. Elise, 31, a doctor saving lives. Nora, 31, an advocate for transgender rights. Daniel, 25, navigating autism with his father's love. Sophie, 18, a budding artist. And Ava, 8, his late-born spark. It's his support for Nora's transition, his strength through Sarah's illness, his refusal to let Ethan's loss define him. He still works, starring in Last Light 2025, a $40 million drama about a patriarch facing mortality, his eyes carrying a lifetime's weight. His awards: Oscars, Globes, the Kennedy Center Honors 2010, the SAG Life Achievement Award 2019 are footnotes. His loyalty to Varelli, his mentorship of young actors, his dedication to his late father's memory through art grants. These are his human legacy. James Callahan is no recluse, hiding in wealth. He lives between Wisconsin's silence and Chicago's pulse, between Ava's laughter and Sarah's courage. At 82, he is a warrior scarred by divorce, lawsuits, illness, and loss, yet still standing, still loving, still creating. His true wealth is his endurance, his choice to love despite pain, to rise after every fall. From the haunted drifter of Night's End to the wise patriarch of Last Light, which James Callahan performance has etched itself into your heart.
Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more dives into Hollywood's hidden history.